the Prime Minister has held a, quote, constructive meeting with his Chinese counterpart, where Anthony Albanese brought up concerns about China's warship circumnavigation of Australia earlier this year. The PM asked Xi Jinping to give more notice when China conducts live fire exercises in the Tasman Sea. The President didn't offer a guarantee, telling Mr Albanese that China would continue to engage in exercises in international waters. Well, for her take, let's bring in National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. Bridget, thank you so much for being with us. Look, that was discussed, defence was discussed, lots of other things discussed. This trip essentially about economics. After years of terrible relations between China and Australia under the coalition, this level of diplomacy is good for Australia, isn't it?
Well, great to be with you, Mon, and the Prime Minister's visit to the People's Republic of China is obviously welcome. China is an important trading partner and we want to have a respectful relationship. And as you mentioned in your opening comments, the PLA Navy circumnavigating our country, conducting live fire exercises without warning isn't a very respectful way to conduct a relationship. In fact, and your viewers will be reminded, it was a Virgin pilot that had to call this in, and we saw civilian flights being diverted across the Tasman for a long period of time. So at the time, the Prime Minister was kind of minimising the PLA's behaviour, and it's good to see him raise that with President Xi Jinping in this meeting. But unfortunately and disappointingly, Xi Jinping made it clear that China will continue to behave this way in international waters, and that's disappointing.
Yep, exactly. The question was about trade, and the trade situation under the coalition was shocking. We're in a much better position now, aren't we, under a Labor government?
Well, you shouldn't be trading against your national interest, Mon, and I think that is the great balance of...
What do you mean by that? Because they're our greatest trade partner, so what do you mean by that?
Well, you should always put the national interest first, and so it is important whether the coalition's in government or the Labor Party's in government, that our national interest comes first. And if you remember what disrupted our trading pattern under the coalition government, it was China releasing their list of grievances. They were concerned that we were raising COVID issues out of labs in Wuhan at the time. They didn't like that being called out. Yeah. It turns out now, many years later, that was the right thing to do in our national interest. So we were able to, our major exports weren't disrupted during that time, such as iron ore. And it is great that obviously our lobster and our beef and our other exports are back on track. We welcome that. But the Labor Party nor the coalition should ever sacrifice our national interest to appease trading partners.
We want to move on to another topic now. The Reserve Bank is recommending a ban for all credit card and debit card surcharges, set to save Aussie shoppers around $1.2 billion a year. Small businesses, though, are really worried that they're going to be left to pick up the bill. Bridget, what do you see that the RBA or the government can do here?
Well, we know that Australian banks, Mon, are the most profitable in the world, and part of that profitability comes on the back of these sort of surcharges, and it is consumers and small businesses that pay the price of that. It's part of their business model. So we obviously welcome decreasing the cost and impost on Australian consumers. That is good news, but we don't want to see small businesses pick up the tab on behalf of Australian banks and credit card providers. We know that small businesses are being smashed at the moment with the increase of costs. It's affecting their viability and their ability to keep staffing levels at the same way. So we want both consumers to be winners and also small businesses.
Okay, so how do you do that? Do you slug the bank?
Closely to make sure...
Do you slug the bank then? Is that what the government needs to do here?
Well, the RBA's got a paper out for discussion, and I just don't want to see one side of the equation being left to pick up the tab, which is small businesses, because that will just mean the price is pass through to the consumer at the bill at the end of the day, and that's the concern. So we've got time to consult, so let's get it right.
Yeah, as you point out, a difficult one to navigate. Finally, new research shows that artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT and Gemini are actually dumbing down our kids when they're used in schools. 83% of AI users couldn't recall something they had just written, and students are cutting and pasting essay content instead of learning. It's an extraordinary number, isn't it? Where when you look at how many can recall what they said, what they had written if they'd actually written it themselves, there's a stark difference here. The problem with the government getting involved is once they sort of put guidelines around AI, Bridget, has the technology moved on by then?
Yeah, this is a really serious question, and it's not just our students that are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. It's going to restructure our entire society. We live in a society where knowledge is highly valued, and we've built a whole way of operating in an economic system on the back of that. So I can see this completely being disrupted. It won't just be impacting what it means to be a student, but also what it means to be a worker, and I would argue what it means to be a human. And we need to be not outsourcing those definitions to Silicon Valley and the power to determine our own future to robots and those that control and are able to code. So I think this is a really serious question that governments across the globe need to grapple with, and need to grapple with very, very quickly, because it won't just be impacting our kids.
Yes, indeed. All right, National's Bridget McKenzie, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Mon.